Hey there, Chris. How's it going?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really great. And look, thanks so much for taking the time. As I said, this is just a sort of informal interview, but I kind of feel I lucked out in that I was watching the BBC, The Green Planet, as David Attenborough fame. And, as much as I live for the wildlife photography, the bit that I really can't even choose which I love more, but the outtakes and the behind the scenes bit at the end where it's on location. There was like a really nice sort of piece about how the time-lapse photography is achieved. I saw your name, I got in touch, and I'm extremely grateful that you humored me and said, okay, let's do this little video cast or whatever we want to call it here.
Well, I'm more than happy to join in. I really appreciate the chance to do this. You reached out, just sounded like a lot of fun. There's a lot of things that go in behind, creating all this kind of stuff. And a lot of people just don't really see that much from a day-to-day kind of thing. So, when you get a production like this with all the different various elements, the different people that are involved, it really is kind of interesting to see what goes on behind it and to see exactly how do they pull off some of these things.
Well, I was going to do an intro, but I think that actually just sums it up beautifully. So job done. But yeah, I guess maybe, some people might want to know a little bit the previous projects, accolades. The Green Planet wasn't your first rodeo. That was very much being asked to operate at literally world leading standards, but it's been a journey till you got there, right? So how did you get into this?
Oh boy. Well, it's a little bit of a long story, but a while ago, I was probably about 10, 12, 13 years ago. I was going through a divorce, didn't have a lot of money, had a young son, and I got a little bonus from work, and I used it to buy a camera, a nice camera, a DSLR. It's a little Nikon. And it was the first time I've ever had a camera quite like that. And I instantly just kind of fell in love with using it. And I was using it all the time. I just felt this passion for photography that I never knew I had. But what really interested me more wasn't so much as like taking pictures of people and taking pictures of like portrait work or weddings or events. Well, that was relatively fun. What I enjoyed more than anything else were technical challenges involving photography. And one of the first things I kind of fell into was astrophotography. I never got that good at it, but astrophotography, you want to move the camera to compensate for the rotation of the Earth so you can get long exposure times to collect all that data to get those really gorgeous pictures of galaxies and nebula and stuff like that. And in order to accomplish that, you have to move the camera. Like I said, back then, I didn't really have a lot of money, so I figured I was going to learn how to do this on my own, and I'm going to learn how to build it. And I actually found an online recipe for what's called a barn door tracker. And it's basically two pieces of wood with a hinge. And then there's a threaded rod that's at a curve and a gear and a motor. And as that motor turns, it will actually open that thing up one rotation per day. So you just take the axis and you line it with the North Star Polaris, just off a little bit, but you line it up with that, you run it, and then as the camera moves, camera will compensate for the motion of the sky. And that was the first motion control system I ever built. And that thing was just two pieces of plywood, a door hinge, and about $10 worth of electronic parts. So it was nothing really all that fantastic, but it was a really interesting thing to do that for me because I'd never really quite done anything like that. I mean, when I was a kid, I loved my Legos. I've always kind of liked the idea of tearing things apart. I had a hard time putting them back together, but this was the first time I'd ever done something like that. And during my interest in astrophotography, I found this video that was put out by a time-lapse photographer called Timescapes. And I think a lot of time-lapse photographers can kind of trace back their interests to seeing that first video, because it was the first time I've ever seen a camera moving while it's actually filming something in another time. And I just found it incredibly captivating and immersive. So after I built that barn door tracker, I said, all it is getting a motor to move, right? So I just need to learn how to get a different type of motor to move on a different type of a system. I had a friend who was a little bit more versed in mechanical engineering. He helped out and we designed our first time-lapse rail. And it was just something that would just move the camera and take a picture and move the camera and take a picture. And you put all those images at the end together, and there you go. You got this beautiful moving time-lapse. And it was pretty neat. And I put all the information on it online. So I put videos on how to build one, complete comprehensive parts list, where to find every single part for it. The parts that had to be custom made or machined, I had the files up available for that. And even showed step by step how to solder every little component together and build one of these things in order to make it work. I did that because I appreciated the guy who did the barn door tracker and put it online. Yeah. He got nothing from me doing that. You know, there was it wasn't a charge. He just put it out and just made it available. That was really kind of the first time I really heard the term open source. And I just fell in love with the idea. So I put my entire time-lapse rail out there, open source, figuring anybody with the time and energy that wants to try and build one, well, here you go. And you can have something that's going to cost you time, but it'll cost you a lot less when it comes to, when it comes to like dollar amount, because the whole thing could have been made, I believe, for a little under $400. And if you're going to go buy one, generally you're looking at about $1,200 to $1,300 just to get a basic system back in those days. So that really kind of started my entire love with building and creating things. And it was following time-lapse, which I was heavily interested in. There's so much that happens around us that we can't see, either because it's way too fast for us to see, or it's way too slow for us to see. If you want to see the stuff that's way too fast, you got to get a high-speed camera, and you already know what you're doing at that point if you're even considering buying one, because they're so incredibly expensive. They're just astronomically expensive. You're looking at about $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 for one of those. But to take things to move really slow and make them quick, oh, that's easy. That costs a heck of a lot less. So that really kind of pushed the direction that I went with it. And we just started building these things and selling them online. And people from all over the world were asking us to build these rails and manufacture them and sell them to them. And it got to the point where I just kind of fell out of love with the manufacturing. I love building new things. I love creating things, but redoing the same thing over and over. Plus, we weren't making very much off of each one. It was really not enough to make it worthwhile. So eventually we just decided we can't support this. We don't have our manufacturing process down. Everything was hand built, and it just took too much time. And, I'm kind of a family guy. I like to spend time with my son. And, this was taking a lot of that away. So we just kind of let that float and just drift off, and people quit paying attention and people quit buying them. And then I had, several cameras, some motion control equipment, and it was the winter time, and I didn't feel like dragging it all the way out through the snow. So I had a room in my basement. I put a little light down in there, grabbed some cameras and Hyacinth, and I filmed it. And that was the first time I ever did a plant. And I'll never forget just the feeling of excitement when I finally got to pull that footage and look at it, because it was so unlike anything that anybody else had done. They, in the world of time-lapse photography, they tend to refer to the Holy Grail as a day to night time lapse, where you go from full sun to just pitch black, and you see the stars out there. Because way back in the day, it was such a technical challenge to accomplish it. Nowadays, it's a lot simpler. But for me, the Holy Grail of time lapse has always been to film something and show somebody something that they've never seen before. Do something completely new, some completely unique. So when I started filming plants, I realized I had to do something, because these plants didn't listen to me. I could tell it, I want you to do this, and I want you to grow over here. It's not going to listen. It's like trying to take pictures of puppies and children, or puppies with children, especially after espresso. Good luck. It's really, they never do what you expect them to do. So I ended up having to create a way to film them where I could not just plan out a camera path and film it, but where I could actually observe what was happening and change the direction of the camera path on a whim in order to accommodate a plant that was growing in a different direction. That ended up getting some attention. And yes, I worked on a production called Big Pacific. I filmed on it for probably about 4 months, and they did not use one single second of the footage that I got them, which was That was kind of sad. It was my first documentary series. I was amped up for it, and then when it came out, I'm like, oh, they didn't use any of it. Okay, but then again, the plants that they were trying to get me to film, they were hard to find in the wild. And in fact, I don't think they were actually able to find them in the wild. So it was missing that entire portion. The time lapse couldn't hold that story all on its own. Then, after that, during all of this, I was working in telecommunications. I was working as a technician, as an engineer, and eventually got into management. It was a really good career, and this was just kind of a weird hobby that I had on the side. I didn't really think much would ever happen from that, but then I got pulled in to work on a project for the History Channel about American farms, and which allowed me to build my studio, which we're in, and to pack it with quite a few of these crazy robots. And then while I was filming that, the producer from the BBC, Paul Williams, reached out to me, and he wanted to talk to me about what I was doing. Fast forward about a year, I was leaving my full-time 20-year tenure telecommunications job that had been very good to me. And I was leaving it to go pursue this full-time, working on Green Planet. So since Green Planet stopped stopped filming a little over a year ago, and now it's out, I've also worked on various productions for like Nat Geo, Netflix, and then there's another one for another film company called Farm Lore Films out in California, as well as doing time lapse for reforestation efforts. So it's been something that really kind of took off. So far, this experiment of leaving the corporate world is still working. But that's kind of the gist of it, it was just, this is all kind of built on this strange foundation of just failure. Everything that I do, I failed at it 4 or 5 times before I got a success. But, you look back over, and it's just little incremental advancements over the course of 10 years. And it just led to now I have a full studio. I've got a workshop both on my property so I can film plants and take care of them while I'm also going about family life. And it's just something that has been an amazing experience. And the chance to work on Green Planet and to see David Attenborough playing with one of the robots I built for them, and seeing the footage that I filmed along with the guys in Bristol, what they filmed all put together, is just, it was an incredibly humbling experience. Because I remember when I first started filming plants, I was thinking about a shot I saw, and I believe it was Green Planet, or Planet Earth, but I could be wrong on it. It was a long shot where it was like this big fallen tree, and there were just things growing around it everywhere. And the camera took this long path, and it just kept growing and growing. And then eventually it went under a leaf or a twig, and a spider started spiraling around. And I looked at it, and I thought, it'd be fun to see if I can figure out how to do this on my own. My assumption was that they had an entire team of people working on this, but no, they actually didn't. They just had a gentleman named Tim Shepard, who's quite amazing.
Was that the one was that the one watching the brambles as they were like climbing over everything, and they had like shot it under the log? Is it that one that got you into it?
Very well could be. It's been a long time since I saw it.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it, and I really should have prepared for that to know where I saw this. I know it was a BBC thing. It might have been Life. It might have been the name of the show.
Yeah, but I realize also this, as we obviously can't afford to show broadcast television, it's slightly academic which clip it was, as I'm not going to edit it in for legal reasons. But I guess what I should do is take the opportunity, as I'm sure most people have been trying to pay attention to what you're saying, and also but can't have their eyes drifting into the background of seeing flashes and the camera move around and lights come on and off. So would you mind just putting people out of their misery and just telling them a little bit what's actually going on in the background?
Yeah, so this is a set that I am filming mushrooms. And what's going on in here is I use the fogger in order to just basically shroud it in fog. Right now in Colorado, at this time of year, we're sitting at about 20% humidity, and I need a nice humid environment for the plants. So rather than have to build a giant chamber around this, I found it's easier just to put a pond fogger in a tub, and I blow fog over the scene, over the set. And that keeps everything uniformly wet and moist. And about 15 seconds before it takes an image, that pond fogger turns off. So all the fog dissipates, then it'll turn off the grow light, so that'll go dark, and then it'll trigger the camera, which is illuminated by flash. And what you see is right now I've got 4 different camera arcs that I'm doing with this. So basically, I'm filming the same scene from 4 different angles simultaneously. So it'll just zip back and forth well, not zip back and forth, it doesn't go that fast, but it'll slowly, arguably, grudgingly move from one position to the next. But it does so with the level of accuracy where I can actually take, every time it takes an image, the next image for that camera path, it's in the right spot. And then when you stitch it all together, I've been filming the same thing from 4 different angles. I think the most I've ever done is about 15 angles at once.
Wow. I think maybe this is a good point to point out that you are not a computer programmer by trade, and that, you know, one of the things that surprised me in the quick chat that we had before filming this was just that you're all self-taught. And describe a little bit that journey, that I'm sure you didn't just jump into 50 different positions code level that you are now. It's taken a journey, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It really has. I mean, there's been a lot of BBC press releases put out about the Green Planet, and in there they keep referring to me as an ex-military engineer. That sounds like I designed war machines and I worked at DARPA or Lockheed Martin or something like that. That's not the case at all.
Washing machines, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I learned when I was in the military, I was in telecommunications. So basically, I was installing phones, I was troubleshooting things like static on the line, stuff like that, all the way out to the central office, and troubleshooting the issues that would happen to their cards going bad, coordinating like card replacements and stuff like that. It was not nearly like how they sound. I think there should be some punctuation when they use those words in a row like that to clarify it a little bit. So like ex-military, comma, self-taught engineer.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of this was self-taught. In fact, I think a lot of us, we have these pivotal moments in our lives where we look back and we did not realize that one conversation was going to change the entire course of your life. Right? If we really look back, we can have and find these. You know, maybe it was just somebody saying the right thing at the right spot, which changed your interest on something, and then later on, 10 years later, everything's different. And that's kind of what happened with me. I had this friend Cregan. He's a really good friend of mine, and he knew I was trying to build one of these time-lapse systems, and he was telling me about this thing called an Arduino, which is basically just a little credit card size computer, and you can program it. And I knew nothing about how to program. I'd never coded anything in my entire life, but he told me to look into it, and I just kind of ignored him. And then like a couple weeks later, I think he suggested it again. And finally, I was like, all right, I'm going to go online. I'm going to buy one. I'm going to try this out, because he was telling me how easy the stuff was. And, you know, right out the gate, it is easy because there's a lot of educational systems built around this platform to make it very simple and very easy to learn. But you'll get to a point where things just start getting very hairy and complex, no matter what. And then it really starts becoming quite a bit more difficult. But at that point, I'd already spent most of my, a good amount of my life troubleshooting, trying to fix things, troubleshooting networks, troubleshooting voice systems, even troubleshooting washing machines and dryers. Anytime something's broken, I just kind of like to see if I can fix it and get it to work, you know? There's something for me that's just kind of therapeutic about that. Plus, it's also making the world a little bit better place. Every time there's something broken, you fix it. It might be a really small thing, but that little small thing is now improved, and I've always enjoyed that. So I had a little bit of a technical mindset already when it comes to troubleshooting and how to do it. But when I started learning electronics, you know, that actually was very beneficial. Understanding just the philosophy of troubleshooting, because when you start writing your own code, you spend most of your time trying to figure out what you did wrong. So yeah, I mean, from there, and then it was just one little bit at a time. Eventually, I learned how to do 3D modeling, then 3D printing. You know, I've learned how to do I've got a plasma CNC that I use to cut out larger pieces of metal. I have a little micro mill that I use if I need to cut really small, precise parts. I've got 4 3D printers now that I can print anything from just enclosure cases to larger industrial pieces, resin, FDM, you know, the whole 9 yards. And it's just the entire process of taking something and making into something better, or taking raw elements and turning it into something, is just something that I've always found It's just fun. It's fun, especially when you're done and you look at it and it doesn't work. And then you troubleshoot it and then it still doesn't work. And then you troubleshoot it and then it kind of works, but then something's wrong and you have to go in and redo it. But you keep at it. You just keep working at it, keep tuning it, keep bringing it up. And eventually it gets to the point where you're doing things that you didn't think you would ever be possible. So for example, here, this robot is the same version of 3 robots I built in Bristol for the BBC for Green Planet. I built myself one too because I thought it was important. If they're going to have these over there, I needed to have the exact same thing here, just in case things went wrong, in case you're running into certain situations. It can help with the troubleshooting process. Plus, it's also a lot of fun to use. But yeah, it's just little bits at a time. And when it comes to the ability to do a lot of this stuff, I off-purpose motion control software that's used for stop motion animation. The big difference between stop motion animators and what I do is I don't move the puppet. I just let it grow.
Yeah. But the sort of presumably the databasing and putting things in the right folders, and as you said, if you're moving into all these different positions, you obviously don't want them just stacked chronologically. You want them organized. Yeah.
No. Luckily, so yeah, that's one thing the software does that's extremely nice is it breaks everything down. And when I'm done, it'll have the output of each different move or exposure that I do is what it's called in there. And so every angle that I'm shooting simultaneously, they're all filed away nicely, so I don't have to dethatch that, which would be an absolute nightmare.
So I guess one of the things that sort of you mentioned about sort of like looking at different time and this notion around sort of being surprised that you never entirely know what you're going to see. What would you say has been one of your most surprising or amazing pieces of work where you just really didn't expect to see something that was very different from the, should we say, human per second 24 frames per second rate of experience?
There's one that really does stand out in mind is something I did shoot for Green Planet, and it's a type of carnivorous plant that will grow inside a bromeliad. And a bromeliad's a plant. It's got a lot of these tight leaves that form into like a little funnel or a cone on the bottom. And quite often there will be a little pool of water in there because it gets watertight at the base. And mosquitoes can grow in there. Various bugs and insects, they'll grow in there. And it's like its own little ecosystem. Well, there is this plant that actually hunts those places. It's called the Tricularia. It's a type of bladderwort. It is a carnivorous plant. And what it does is it sends a long tendril up out of the plant, and it will sit there and kind of watch and wiggle around and feel its way around for another plant. And once it finds it, it'll immediately hook down. And once it touches water, it re-expands itself out and starts growing. So it grows its bladder traps.
Wow.
It has these little underwater traps. It kind of looks like a kidney. And if something gets too close to it, it's already kind of built and pressurized like this. And when something gets close to it, it goes pop like that. And it sucks in all the water right in front of the opening and snaps the door shut. And now the bug is stuck in there, and it will produce enzymes that will digest and break down and eat that in order to get the nutrients that it needs.
Yeah.
So I guess what I get into with it is that plants can be predatorial. They can absolutely hunt. Plants communicate with each other. There are forests out there where, if a certain type of a moth or a certain type of a beetle is infesting that forest and it's starting to cause wreck the trees, they'll release like this chemical signature, like pheromones or some kind of like chemical that attracts a certain type of bird that will come in, and it knows, and the birds will detect that, come down, and it knows that's where you get all these nice big juicy beetles. So they will actually call in reinforcements from other creatures within the animal and plant kingdom. So there's a lot of these weird relationships where plants and animals will actually benefit each other, and in very unusual ways. But I guess, yeah, the most impressive thing to me about plants is mostly when you see it, there's a plant. What's it doing? It's planting. It's doing what a plant does. It's just sitting there, it's chilling, but that plant very well might be offensive, like mounting an offensive assault. That plant very well may be getting ready to try to reproduce. It might be looking for, there's all kinds of different things that these plants will do. And they've even found evidence that, they can even communicate through mycelium within the ground.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. So there's all these things that we just don't see what happens. We just see there's a leaf, there's a plant. You speed that time scale up into human time, and all of a sudden they're not what you would think. You're watching vines. I mean, they're just struggling to grab every plant above them and drag these plants down, because for them it's like they want to get to the sunlight, and they want to drag, and at all costs they need to get that sun. They need to get those leaves exposed, photosynthesized, so they can have energy to grow and develop and continue on with the species and continue on with the plant. They absolutely do. They behave in ways that we wouldn't expect, and it's really fascinating to watch them tear at each other, claw each other, pull each other down, and fight for resources, very much the way that animals do in the animal kingdom.
So I'm curious to know, actually, if David Attenborough or the producer phones you up and says, okay, it's all very well, you've done a great job in the visual spectrum. We'd now like you to go in somewhere else in the electromagnetic spectrum. So where next? Would you go ultraviolet, infrared, X-ray? What's the next crazy thing that you think? I mean, it just made me think that thing about the whole mycelium thing. At some point, how are we going to capture that? Because it's not just in the visual spectrum; it's a chemical spectrum as well.
Currently, where my next frontier is how this is an uncomfortable question for anybody, but how many things are crawling on you and living on you right now?
Oh yeah, that's it's pretty spectacular. I mean,
we don't see it.
A couple of million different things.
Yeah, millions of things on us every day. Right out of the shower, you got these things are all over you. They're all over everything. They're everywhere. There are these little micro environments every place that you look. And we don't really see a lot what's going on there, because imaging super small things is very difficult. It requires very expensive equipment in order to be able to see it. And that equipment might be good at imaging, but not necessarily filming. So right now, what I'm trying to do is I am working on systems to where I can film accurately at about 20 time magnification. So you can really get in there. That you're looking at cellular structures of plants at that point. If you're looking at a fly, you're just seeing its foot, and you're seeing what's on its foot, and this foot is huge. In order to accomplish so, the problem is you have what's called depth of field. That is how much of the area you have in focus. So if you take a picture of a large landscape, everything is pretty much in focus. But when you get closer for a portrait, you notice that the background gets blown out while the person looks really nice and perfect. And the background gets blurry and everything before it. And then the closer you get to the subject, the smaller that depth of field gets, until you're looking at a fraction of a millimeter, just microns deep depth of field. Wow. So when you're taking a look at an image, if you're looking at a ball, for example, you're going to see an area of focus that wraps right around the top and over to the side of the ball, but everything before and after is not going to be in focus. So what I'm working on is techniques in order to do macro stacking, which is a technique that people, when there's filming or taking pictures of really small bugs and stuff like that, they will take 100 images and move that depth of field back.
Is this the same stuff as light field? Is this the same stuff as light field technology?
I would assume so. Well, possibly. I'm not familiar with light field.
There was like a little square sort of rectangular camera, and it was on Kickstarter like a few years ago. And it did just that. You could go into the software afterwards and pick the depth of field. And so I think it's doing exactly what you said, which was
I believe that was the Lytro.
That's it.
Now that's the one that captures infinite depth of field because it uses so many cameras on it, I believe. But this is a little bit different because what I'm trying I don't know how that works if you get to the microscopic level, but it's similar. You're taking a whole bunch of images with the focus all the way to the back of the subject, all the way to the front, like 100 images, and you put them in what's called a stacking software. And it takes those images and it looks for all the areas that are high contrast or high where the focus is there, where it's got sharpness. And it just takes that little bit of the image and throws out all the blurry stuff. And then when you combine them all together, that's how you get that entire bug's eye in focus rather than a narrow little band. So what I'm trying to do is convert that over to time lapse and video work, and at the same time adding motion control with it as well. I've got some really interesting prototype equipment that a company has sent me to play with. That is first time ever I've been able to get that level of accuracy with motion, where I'm filming things 20-time magnification. And to think about how big that is, I mean, you know, you're taking like an entire frame of view from the camera, and that entire area you're seeing might be a millimeter across, so, or even less. It just it allows, it's, you know, it's just, you know, this is something I just want to do, is I want to start focusing on the things that we can't see. I'm not terribly interested in doing a lot of the things that other people have done so well. You know, day to night time lapse of skies, clouds, all those kind of things, beautiful sunsets, national parks, stuff like that. I'm trying to go in a direction just hasn't been explored much. And that's really, it's one of those kind of pursuits that I don't have a direct need to do it. I just want to do it. And I know that the challenges on this are ridiculously high, but it's one of those kind of absurd challenges or things that you do. And while I very well might find myself derailed to a completely different direction because of my during my efforts on this, those efforts might be the reason I derail in another direction, because I found something completely new.
I think that's such a nice point of that, you know, sometimes you set out thinking that one thing is going to be the goal or the target that you're trying to hit, and you uncover or discover something else, and you think so yeah. I mean, could you explain a little bit more, like what does a day in the life, or shall I say a week in the life, as maybe you work at a different expansion of time to the rest of us, but you know, how much time do you spend reflecting, researching, as well as, should we say, doing the things that you get paid for?
A lot of what I do involves almost no research, probably because I'm not the best book smart guy, and reading through research, I have a hard time with it. Generally, I seem to do the best just by being bullheaded and plowing forward in a direction that I don't know what I'm doing. That's where I generally seem to learn the most. But in an average day for me could be anything. You know, I might wake up on Monday morning and come out and have some coffee, check on the robots, make sure the shoots are going good, and then I might spend the rest of the day, you know, just sitting there doing 3D design, CAD design for a new system or a new piece of equipment that's hopefully going to allow me to accomplish something. Or it might be rebuilding a 3D printer because it's not working right. It might be a day where you know, I'm going over to somewhere like the Botanic Gardens and picking up trash bags full of leaves from like their conservatorium, and then dumping them out in my yard and stepping on the cockroaches in the middle of the winter that came out with it. And then, like, you know, bagging all that up for set material. Or I might spend a day tearing ferns in half. You know, there's I have days where I'm working on my formicarium, where I have a colony of ants. So it's so incredibly divisive, like spread out. But when I'm doing, when I'm kind of focused on a shoot, mostly what I'm doing is, in the beginning, I'm thinking about, how do I want this to present? How do I want it to look? What do I want the ultimate footage to look like? How much space do I need to accomplish this? What kind of elements do I need to bring into the set in order to do this? How am I going to handle the watering of the plants? How am I going to, you know, plant care is very important. Because if I can't touch the set for 3 weeks, it has to be automated. Because if I go in there and start messing with it, you'll see the results, or you'll see that on the results, like something will move or bend, or it just kind of messes it up. So there's a lot of technical thought into plumbing, lighting, and stuff like that. And then I just start grabbing chicken wire, set elements, plaster, whatever I'm going to be using at the time, and I just start building that up. And I try to keep in mind how I want it to go when I'm doing the build. And then once I have the set looking good, I usually just leave it for probably 4 or 5 days before I'll even begin to start filming, because things like to settle down a little bit. And it also gives me a time to just kind of poke around with it here and there and kind of think, you know, what's going to work, what's not going to work, playing around with the lighting. And then once I have everything where I feel it needs to be, then it's just time to hit go. And that's where everything will break apart. So
I guess on that note, Could
Yeah.
we, as we've very kindly taken the effort to speak to me now on the tablet computer, could we do a little bit of a workshop tour as we let's see
Sure.
how far the Wi-Fi takes us?
Yeah. Let's see. Right here.
All right.
So I gotta. There's that big thing there that's in the way. It's got to kind of stay in the way because of what I'm shooting for a client, so I can't show the actual thing. But you kind of get the idea of like the size of the set, and and over here there's of course the camera. There's the humidification system. I build a lot of really weird environmental systems. Here's kind of the upper portion of it. You can see where it's got this large gantry, and I can move that anywhere from there. Let's see over here. This is a commercial shoot that I've got going on with one of my robots. This is Baby. She was the first of the 3 towers, and you can see it's a very tall system. Bring it over here.
Yeah.
So the camera can move back and forth on this bar, and this entire thing will raise and lower. I can take it from about the camera from the ground all the way up to about a little over 2 meters in height. You can see there's the pan, tilt, all that kind of stuff on there. Each one of my shooting stations has a laptop set up with it and various bits of equipment. There's a lot of things like this is one of my controllers that I build for timing. It triggers the software to do what I want. It also handles, let me see, do you see that? Okay, yeah. It also handles like the pumps and the lighting and stuff like that. Right now it's off, but there's a lot of little things like this that I have to build in order to accomplish the work. Over here, this is Gomez, my 2 towers. I used to have 4, but 2 of them now are over in Exeter in the UK. And this is a set that I'm working on. It's a burn area, just to look like an area that's been kind of decimated by wildfire. Oh, wow. And then I've got plants coming up through it, showing the rebirth of life.
Yeah. Is that like the fire lily type stuff? Was that some of your work, or was that a different?
No, the fire lily was completely shot on location.
Wow.
Which I thought was absolutely, they did an amazing job with it. But yeah.
So they couldn't, I usually assume that they splice a little bit of studio and a little bit of location, but that was all location. Yeah.
As far as I remember, yeah, it's all location because they don't know where they're going to be. I don't think enough is known about the fire lilies to be able to cultivate them.
Yeah.
But if anybody can do it, it would have been Tim Shepard. If he might have filmed some of it, but I was looking at it. I believe everything on there was shot on location.
Yeah, I remember that being very much the work that was needed to get the shot. Yeah. So yeah, but it looks like you got a terrarium or something as well, is it?
Yeah, over here there's a little Drosera rotundifolia that I had to film not that long ago. I used to have a pretty decent collection of carnivorous plants, and I was filming them a lot. But the problem is that I didn't need another hobby of caring for the carnivorous plants. I got to be really careful how many hobbies I pick up because my entire job consists of about like 20 or 30 independent hobbies meshed together. So I love doing these things. But yeah, this little guy, he's already been filmed. He's good to go. I just don't know what to do with him and don't have the heart to just get rid of it because I actually really do like these plants. I've got a friend that lives not too far from here who's one of the largest, I think he's got one of the largest collections of carnivorous plants, probably this side of the planet. I'm probably going to take him over to him someday and see if he wants them, because every now and then he'll let me borrow a plant and film. Over here, this is something I'm working on that's just for kind of a fun shoot for me. It's kind of hard to see because of the light. Let me see if that helps. This is a vine. And I'm growing the vine out. And right now I'm filming it with this robot. It's not really capturing any useful footage. I'm just kind of studying it.
Okay.
So I can sit there and I can come back later and then after I film it for a little while, kind of seeing what it's going to do. Then when I get ready to actually really film it and put it on a set, I have a little bit more knowledge of what to expect from it and a better chance of success.
So a sort of dress rehearsal, if you will.
Yeah. And I'll always throw kind of like a little blue screen behind it, just so it is footage that I can extract it and use it possibly at a later time. Cool. Then down here, we got some really weird stuff. I've got, let's see if you can see that. This is a shoot that I'm working on with some seeds. I'm trying to see if I can see it. There's just a bunch of seeds down here, and I got a 4x macro objective on here.
Yeah.
And I'm shooting it. So I'm shooting with a microscope objective on this camera and using this slider. And this is what moves the camera forward and backward to shift that focus area forward and back. And then I take all that footage and combine it. And in order to run it, I'm just using this. It's an Omotomo Spectrum. It's a little time-lapse robot. And it's a pan tilt, but I don't want the pan tilt. It will control 2 other motors though. So I have one controlling the macro rail, and then I have one controlling this tiny turntable. So I can actually do focus stacked kind of a video. So you can see a whole bunch of it in focus and just really kind of take it to a new level. So this is something I've been playing around with. It's pretty new, this lens setup. And let's see, over here, big Jeff Goldblum fan.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Man, I tell you what, it's something really touching about the love of a man and his monkey. And then I got one more room back in here. This is Otto. This is the first robot that I ever built. Right now there's no camera on it and it's collecting dust. I've got a shoot coming up with this one. I'm just waiting for more information from the producers before I really start spending a lot of time tearing everything down and building it up. So, and plus I'm just get too busy to run all the robots simultaneously unless I need to. And then behind me over this side is just another kind of shooting area. And this is where I plan to start shooting those vines. In fact, that one vine, I've got 8 or 9 of them that I've been growing through hydroponics that are starting to do that little whip around, looking for on. So later today, I'm going to kind of clean this area out and I'm going to get this ready and start filming here. So this is my very small bodice studio. It's about 600 square feet. And I try not to spend too much time in here. I spend most of my time out in my workshop, just because the more I'm in here, especially if I have really critical moment shots going, I want to monitor it all outside of here, because every time I walk through, I have the potential to kick a light stand or knock something over, or so all of my computers are all remote controlled inside my house with my main PC, and I'll pull all my shoots up and I'll check them before I go to bed in the mornings. And I try to make one appearance in here at least once a day to check water levels, reservoirs, and stuff like that. But unless I'm actively building a set or starting up a shoot, I spend more of my time in my workshop. That's definitely my happy place.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I'm ever so grateful that you took the time. I did somewhat have my heart in my mouth watching you touch rigs and think, oh God, I hope he doesn't knock one over because of me. So that's really kind of you, because I know it's a different mindset when you're having a conversation and everything. But I guess one of the weird questions I sort of wanted to ask you is you'd done a lot of things to do with the living. Obviously, another time lapse that I think most people have seen is sort of things in decay.
Yes.
And I appreciate it's probably not a particularly glamorous or fun thing to do, but I guess it's a job that, you know, someone has to study, you know, murder scenes and all these sorts of things for the greater good. The reason I ask this is have there been any requests for you to help on, should we say, unusual or unexpected projects to do with the photography techniques you use?
Actually, the most unusual one so far was a reforestation company has reached out to me. They've got their own special way that they do plant delivery, and they wanted to film reforestation efforts over a long period of time. So I had to build what I call, for my Watchmen, I'm putting it out as an actual product here soon, but it's a long-term capture rig. And it's a no nonsense, no frill one, and they just work. And that's what people seem to like about them. But they're going to go out there and film for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, hopefully, and continue to gather that data. I'm sure a lot of folks have seen that video or that documentary called Chasing Ice about glacial retreat, where really long-term time lapse was done. And this is going to be something akin to that. So they're actually looking to create a documentary using this footage and talking about their company, how they go about things and what they're doing to kind of help the world. So that's probably one of the more unusual ones. However, I was on a call with a producer not that long ago, and there was comment about potentially sending me a 1,400-pound bovine that is recently passed and filming it. And I tell you what, my wife, I love her so much. She hears some of the weirdest things from me. Like I was only able, unfortunately, I can't just order one golden orb weaver. I have to order 5. And those things are like this big.
Oh, wow.
Or, there's a colony coming in the mail. Could you just check the mail on your way home, babe? Because I don't want it to sit there overnight. She's like, what is in the mail? Or something is hatched in the studio, or, hey, if you see anything weird, just let me know. Something kind of got out. Or, the slime mold has escaped this container again. So, she's been awfully patient with a lot of these really strange things that I end up doing. But so far, the idea of filming something dying, I gotta say, it's not too appealing because my studio that day is like, ugh. But I think whatever it is, I mean, I would love to have an opportunity to do something similar like that. Maybe like a little outside shed, maybe.
I didn't think you'd want to be stuck in with.
But no, it's hard to tell where these kind of requests come from. When people reach out to me with filming requests, it's definitely not always production companies. Sometimes it's also just, there might be a scientific company or something that's just like, hey, we see you build this equipment. Have you ever built something like this? And depending on how the conversation goes, I might build them a robot. So it's there's definitely engineering portions to go in as well. But yeah, I don't know if my neighbors would really like too much of having a lot of dead things being filmed.
So I guess I kind of probably can't just finish on a note of dead bovines, but I guess maybe on a more
here's something.
A wholesome thing. Okay.
I got an idea. It's something that maybe you can cut in. I'll send you the footage. But what I do is I have some footage that I've managed to do of a camera moving on a single path while something rots and unrots.
Oh.
Yeah, it was an effort just to see if I could do it because
was that the Satsuma or orange that's on your website?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So with that, it only decays once.
Yeah.
And normally if you see something decay and undecay, you just reverse the video. So if you have the camera moving, like say, here's your subject, the camera's moving around like this, and it's decaying. When it undecays, the camera goes back. But what I have is I have the camera continuing to move all the way around as it decays and undecays. I call it a disentropy is what I call the kind of like those little shoots that I do. But I've got a few of fruit, stuff like that rotting, but it continues on a single camera path, which nobody had ever done before. And it was something that was really kind of fun to do and see because I know quite a few people in the film world now, in cinema world, and definitely in the time-lapse photography world. And I remember showing that, and it really toasted everybody's noodle figuring out how that was done.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at it, it sort of had that bullet time quantity of like you had to watch it twice, maybe more, to sort of go, wait, how did you do this? And I think I can figure it out. But yeah, I kind of love that about your process of just sort of trying stuff out. And it's that thing of like, you seem to be able to be lucky enough that you're surprised by your own work, which I think is quite a rare thing, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of times where holy crap, that actually worked. In fact, that's almost every time something does work, to tell you the truth.
Well, look, Chris, I'm conscious that I know we could talk forever, but look, you've been more than generous of your time, and thank you so much for the little tour of the where the magic happens, and hearing some of your journey to get to such an unusual and remarkable place in the industry of, I guess, what you'd call sort of visual engineering, if we should call it that.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute delight getting the chance to talk to you and, spend some time with you. It's I love doing this work, and it's something that has really become a passion of mine. And a lot of times people can walk in and they might see what I'm doing here and they get a little bit of shell shock. But one thing I think that everybody should always try to take away from anything is all of these things are just little steps. I didn't get here overnight. 10, 12, 13 years is what it took. But as long as you just learn from your mistake or learn from your failures. I wouldn't even call it a mistake. A failure is just a good opportunity to learn. As long as you learn from them and pay attention to what you're doing, you might look back and see this huge path behind you. In fact, I think most people probably already do. They just don't really realize it. You know, anybody can do this stuff. It's just put your mind into it, put your effort into it. And anytime something fails, just remember that's not really a bad thing. If you learn from it, you might learn something new. And just keep pushing forward. But thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
No, that's great, Chris. Thank you so much, and wonderful advice to close on. But have a great day.
All right,
Take
you
care.
too.
Thanks a lot.